evening, everybody. It's 6 o'clock, and I would like to open the Monday meeting, June 27th, of the Board of Selectmen, Town of Freetown. My name is Paul Sadik. I'm the chairman. Also, we have Selectman Robert Joes and Selectwoman Lisa Pacheco here. We've got a number of things on the agenda. A lot of housekeeping items that we're going to take first, and once we get through those, we're going to come back to have a discussion that some of the people are here about the party that went on at 1800 Avenue a week ago. So
People can't hear you back here.
We're just going to take care of a couple of items first, housekeeping items, and then we're going to get to why everybody's here second, okay?
if anybody has a PA system, bring it up, but I don't have one, and this is the best I can do. The first thing on the agenda is approve the abatements for the fire department, ambulance. Oh, hold on for a second, there you go. Anybody recording the meeting?
Free cam.
Free cam. What's this here?
Eyewitness News, Channel 12.
Channel 12, who's the other one?
WBSM News.
WBSM. Natalie Gauls is our administrative assistant, and she is typing the meeting, and also this is her recorder. She was recording the meeting. So with that, before I go any further, let me go, anybody here for public discussion, other than anything that's on the agenda? Anybody want to talk about anything under public discussion?
Postcards in the mail.
What was that?
Postcards in the mail
What postcard?
about the recycling.
Oh, about that everybody got this week?
Yeah?
All right, that's not on the agenda, but I can tell you a quick thing about that. I got one also on Thursday in my mail. We would have put it on the agenda. However, it was after we posted the agenda. But I do want to tell you that the location of this facility is up in the industrial park off of Ridge Hill Road in Assonet. That's in the industrial park. That's where this facility is. They're putting it up now. A lot of money is being invested in this particular facility, but I do want to tell you that they went through extensive DEP review, and they had to get a DEP permit that was approved a while ago. In addition, they still have to come to the Board of Selectmen to get their local license. They had a local license a year ago. That has expired, and they still have to come back to the Board of Selectmen for their current license. Okay, so let's go on to what we have on the agenda here. We have the first thing is to approve abatements for the month of July, August, September, October, November, and December of 2014. This is for ambulance service, and the town of Freetown, in the past when this was voted in, if the insurance companies or a person doesn't have insurance to pay for the ambulance service, once we exhaust going to the insurance companies, anything that's left over that hasn't been paid, we abate it. That was how the passage of the article at a town meeting went many years ago. So do I have a motion to abate the total of?
$80,088 and 89. So I'll make a motion to abate July 2014 to December 2014, including August, September, October, November, in the amount of $80,088.89.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, passed unanimously. The second thing that we have here is to sign some reserve fund transfers. I got a copy here, so why don't you take those? The first one that I've got here is a reserve fund transfer for legal fees. And the amount is $8,677.78. It's a transfer from the reserve fund to the legal fee account. I have a motion.
Make a motion to forward to the FinCom for approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to forward to the FinCom for approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. What do you guys want to sign it? Quickly,
Yeah, I'll
you can sign it. All right, the second one is a transfer, an inter-fund transfer within the department. This is to move $71.56 from the health insurance account to the life insurance account, $71.56.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The next one is to transfer within the department $5,000 from the trash bag account over to the waste removal and disposal account. $5,000, the waste removal and disposal account has a negative balance of $2,781.62. Any motion?
Motion to transfer $5,000.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the next one is a request to move $950 from the building inspector's account to the town property custodial account. The present balance in that account is $1,034.10. I'd like to move $950.
Make a motion to move.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The next one is to move $5,000 from the reserve fund. And that is to fund electrical inspector salaries to the, because of the increase in the solar panels that are going up in town, they need additional funding to pay the electrical inspectors. When you put up solar panels, there's 3 electrical inspections per household that has to be done. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to move forward.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Joe, is anything under the Board of Health?
I do not have anything on the Board of Health.
We've got a couple of items that I'll hand over to Ms. Pacheco. She is the chairman of Personnel Board, so she will handle the next 2 items. Mr. Joes is the chairman of the Board of Health.
All right, we have appointments for the fiscal year 2015 to 2016, as stated in the agenda. I'm not going to read all of these. Robert Joes Building Committee, Economic Development Committee, EMA and Public Safety, Local Emergency Planning Committee, Soil Board, and CERTA.
I'll make a motion to appoint Mr. Joes.
I'll second that.
Yeah. He can't.
You don't have to if you want. I don't mind.
Can we give him more?
I'll give them all of mine, too. No.
Okay, motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Um,
Oh, sorry, it's your
Thank
turn. There you go.
Stepping on my toes again.
No, no.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Okay. For Mr. Sadik, we have Bristol County Advisory Board, Building Committee, Economic Development Committee, EMA, Health Insurance Advisory Committee, Local Emergency Planning Committee, Regional School Finance Committee, Regional School Negotiating Committee, Sexual Harassment Officer, Soil Board, and Taxation Relief Committee. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to appoint.
I'll second. All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Ready?
All right, and then also, to have a motion to have Mark Joes for Harbor Master and Shellfish Warden.
I'll make the motion. Can't say.
I can't.
I'll second that. All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by aye.
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 And I'll abstain.
Okay. And also, I have a change of status form for Robert Rebecca, effective July 1st, 2016.
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good. You all set?
Yep.
Okay, we'll go back now, just to go over, the next Board of Selectmen meeting is scheduled for July 11th. We also have one scheduled for Monday, July 25th, and August 8th and August 22nd. Under all new business, we have the water agreement on there. We had a meeting on that last week, and there's nothing that has changed on that. Okay, now, the first thing on the agenda that we bypassed, and we'll take it now. As you know, I'm Paul Sadik, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Lisa Pacheco, the Chairperson of the Personnel Board, and Bob Joes is the Chairman of the Board of Health. Tonight, the Board of Selectmen would like to have an open discussion about the events on Saturday night, June 18th. That's because we had a lot of residents contact us. And I want to point out tonight to everybody, this is not a public hearing. This is an agenda item on the Board of Selectmen's agenda. That said, I am going to limit the discussion to Freetown residents only, and I would like to have no more than 3 minutes from each person. All right? We don't want a lot of redundancy. So if somebody starts talking about the same thing, I'm going to cut off the discussion and we'll go on to the next person. You know, 18 Leonard Street, just to give anybody that's here that's not familiar with it, 18 Leonard Street is at the end of a fairly large neighborhood, and the neighborhood starts at the intersection of Cudworth Avenue and Locust Street. Cudworth Avenue is the only way in and the only way out of that area. So you have like a funnel, and there's only one way in and one way out. So it's a pretty tight area. You know, certainly last Saturday night was overwhelming to everybody with a major disturbance in that area there, not only to the neighborhood, but also to the police department. No one was ready for this. I like that this discussion is going to be productive, talk about what we can do in the future to prevent any such incident. Our residents in the neighborhood had tolerated a lot of people down that area, a lot of people that may have disturbed the peace or from their actions, you know, had a breach of the peace. So, you know, it was a tough situation. I think our police department did a very good job handling it after we saw what we had down there. So anyway, let's have a productive meeting, and I want to introduce the Chief of Police, because I'm sure he's going to set the tone for the meeting. Chief Carlton Abbott has been the chief here for quite a long time, and we'll let him take over.
Okay, good evening. Carlton Abbott, Chief of Police, approximately 20 years as chief. Started my service in 1979. I have a Juris Doctorate. I've also been an adjunct instructor at various colleges in police administration and tactics. Additionally, I'm the president of the Southeastern Mass Police Training Association.
Excuse me, Chief. Ma'am, what are you doing?
I know you came in late. Are you keeping me in as well?
I'm trying to.
Which, stand up, please, give us your name.
Modi Guva from the Standard Times.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Chief.
Additionally, I'm president of the Southeastern Mass Police Training Association, and I'm responsible for in-service training of veteran officers and reserve police officers in southeastern Massachusetts. As part of that curriculum, we include use of force training and de-escalation of use of force and constitutional standards. So I'd like to hear from you tonight. Obviously, many of you are upset. And once we hear from you, I will then hopefully be able to share what we were thinking during the entire process, and I'll do that with the assistance of a PowerPoint. So if you want to...
Okay. Anybody want to speak? If you do want to speak, raise your hand. I'll recognize you. We want you to give your name and where you live, your address. Sir?
My name is Craig Vieira. I live at 14 Leonard Ave. If I may read a statement, it'll take me 3 minutes.
Sure thing, sir.
I live on Leonard Ave with my wife and 2 young children. It became evident very early in the evening of June 18th that the residents of 18 Leonard Ave were hosting another large party, a residence with a history of recent violence. According to all reports of detailed requests, at a minimum, the Freetown Police Department was aware of a party taking place at a location with known priors. It was only until approximately 9 p.m. that I witnessed the first Freetown cruiser on patrol. Cars could no longer pass by the now single-lane road. Many were parked illegally, blocking driveways, lawns, or in people's driveways. No tow trucks were on scene all night. By this time, cars, buses, and even double-decker buses were lined up to Wing Ave. Our entire neighborhood was a parking lot. At 10:30 p.m., my wife got home, alerted me that a Freetown police officer was directing traffic. She couldn't pull in our driveway safely. She drives a minivan. There was no way a fire truck or rescue vehicles were getting down the road that night. I locked my wife and children in the house with the dogs and went to see firsthand how bad it was. 10:45, I found a police officer who was directing traffic at the bottom of the neighborhood. I asked about safety concerns, emergency vehicle access, noise complaints, towing vehicles, a sobriety checkpoint, closing the floodgates and turning the masses away. He didn't know how to shut it down, and nothing prevented it in the bylaws is what I was told. Nothing was done, even though at 9 p.m. it was evident that this was not a family reunion. We have a single access point neighborhood. Closing the neighborhood was not going to be difficult. Put a cruiser at the top, shut it down, turn them away. From 10:45 p.m. on, I was patrolling the neighborhood with a flashlight, preventing partygoers from trespassing on private property while getting threats yelled at me. I witnessed alcohol containers littered everywhere, people urinating on private property and the road, people smoking marijuana and rolling blunts in public, and one girl who appeared to be passed out in between cars. Complete debauchery outside my house where my 6- and 3-year-olds were trying to sleep. For one night, I lived in a neighborhood without laws and where residents were no longer afforded liberty as they felt it best to stay locked in their homes. Somehow we became prisoners. It wasn't until after 12 a.m. when Berkeley police arrived on the scene that they blocked off Cudworth entrance. The floodgates were closed 3 hours too late. All the while, the party organizers collected about $10,000 in revenue and had their fun at our expense. By 1 a.m., a fight broke out soon after my neighbors were being verbally threatened by people leaving the party. I went to bed at 3 when the last of the drunken souls were out of sight. In 2007, I bought a house in a quiet neighborhood. One event has changed my perception of where I live, the safety of my family, and the capability of our local law enforcement. All this being said, one thing sticks in my head. I have one question. Why could we not shut the road down at 9 p.m. and close the floodgates and turn the people away? This could have been handled by one cop, perhaps two. At that point, at 9 p.m., maybe you got 500 people and 4 officers total. Instead, you elected to direct more people to the party, have 8 officers versus well over 1,000 people who have now been drinking for quite a while. The math suggests the odds got worse, and the fact is the lack of action resulted in a more dangerous situation had things gotten out of hand.
Thank you. Anybody else? Sir?
My name is Ted Quinn. I live at 15 Leonard Avenue. And the night of the party, there was a car that was parked in my driveway. My wife went out and told one of the partygoers there's a car in the driveway. He asked somebody at the party to move the car. Anyway, he took a picture of the number plate, and it never got moved till 1 o'clock in the morning. And on the way out, he damaged my new car. He hit my new car. I mean, that's just one incident. I agree with everything that Craig just said. This party was out of control, and it should not happen again. And that person that ran that party went on Facebook and said she's going to run another one.
Sir, did you file a police report?
Yes, I did.
Okay, as long as you did that. Is there anybody else that would like to say a few words?
Yes, my name is Catherine
Would you
Adams,
stand up, please, ma'am?
and I live at 4 Adams
Okay.
Avenue. So, my concern is, a few years ago, I was taken out of my home at 3 a.m. by the Freetown rescue and brought to a hospital in Fall River because I was very ill. What would have happened had I been ill again, or someone of my neighbors and village people and East Freetown, whatever, whoever was in the area, if someone was ill, no one would have gotten the treatment because they couldn't get in. Now, the cars were parked on part of my lawn. On Sunday morning, I picked up an alcohol bottle on my way to church. Nice, right? And said to my husband, who went to an earlier mass, would you please take care of this? He has since thrown that out, thank God. But my concern is one way out. Oh no, there's 2 ways out. One is driving out and the other is swimming. How many of you want to swim Forge Pond in the middle of the night? And that's all I have to say.
Well,
The
thank you.
safety factor.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank God that we didn't have an emergency down there. Okay, anybody else? Sir?
Yes, hi, I'm Matt Cummings. I live on 10 Leonard Ave. I agree with everything that Craig says and Ted, that they are my close neighbors. So my property was one of the properties that did have the altercation. Same thing, I have 2 children in the house. So after that altercation, I did call the police, and they did state that they have no way to get to me. So luckily, 10 to 15 minutes later, 2 police officers did show up on foot, knocked on my door, and then asked us what the problem was. Now, my concern is, within that 10-15 minutes, if things would have escalated, we would have had no safety at all whatsoever. We would have had no backup, and it's very, very concerning. So I would like to know what we're going to do going forward in order to prevent this.
Okay. As you all know, when the people that ran the party were not upfront and truthful with the police department when they came in.
Yes.
So no one really knew what was going to happen down there until it happened.
Yeah.
So that's really the issue.
So at 5 o'clock, the cars were already past my house. So if the police officers did get there at 9 o'clock, there was more than enough time to shut it down. And there were altercations. I know that it stated in the newspaper that no one was arrested, but there were definitely arrestable offenses going out throughout the entire neighborhood. It just never happens.
Anybody else? Sir?
My name is Jeff McGee from 15 Adams Ave. I have a statement, but it's 4 minutes, but could I take a couple minutes from my wife and read it? Sure. Thank you, appreciate it. Good evening, my name is Jeff McGee and I live in 15 Adams Ave in Arizona. I would like to thank the Selectmen and respective chiefs for taking this time to hear some of my neighbors and my own experiences, questions, and concerns about the party at 18 Leonard Ave on Saturday, June 18th. From my perspective, the only one to blame for this egregious disregard for public safety and common decency are the people who organized the event. I'm not here to criticize Chief Abbott and the Freetown Police Department, but would rather thank them for doing a fine job under such overwhelming conditions. Living on the corner of Adams and Chester Avenues, the southwestern corner of my neighborhood, my experience is vastly different than those of my neighbors that live closer to 18 Leonard Ave. From my door to the door of 18 Leonard Ave is approximately half a mile away. At approximately 7:30 p.m. on June 18th, another couple from the neighborhood, my wife and I were babysitting and watching a total of 9 kids ranging from 2 years old to 12 years old. The kids were happily playing in the yard when the storm hit us. Within a 15 to 20 minute period, my corner of the neighborhood went from a quiet, peaceful, and safe place for my kids to play to a very unsafe and scary environment. Upon the first cars that arrived, the intoxicated occupants spilled out and spewed alcohol bottles and trash onto our yards, while other individuals got out of their vehicles to only begin urinating where the children had just been playing. It was surreal, and we felt absolutely compelled to quickly hunker down to protect our children and our property. The adults immediately went into defensive mode. I ran back to my house across the street to lock it up and to ensure my motion detectors were turned on. 2 minutes later, I was briskly walking back to my wife and my children and to the children we were watching when I saw my 5-year-old daughter, a daddy's girl through and through, heading down the neighbor's driveway, heading towards me, and headed towards Chester Avenue that was between us. The street was now already completely full of cars with only a narrow passage, and at this very moment I heard and then saw a car coming around the corner from Adams Avenue at a very high rate of speed towards the same spot my daughter was going. It may have been one of the scariest moments of my life. Luckily, she stopped upon hearing my most desperate of screams for her to do so. From that point on, 8 p.m. or so, the kids were all kept at one central home, giving the parents the ability to monitor them as well as to keep an eye over on properties to the best of our abilities. The 5 households on my little corner banded together for the duration. Sadly, it wasn't until the next morning when I even thought about our friends and neighbors with families and small children that lived on Leonard Ave, and how they must have fared and feared. The rave took control of my neighborhood by storm, a storm of hundreds of cars and busloads of people. This rave party was designed to overwhelm the local police department and to prevent them from doing anything but traffic control. The Freetown Police Department were powerless to stop the hordes of individuals that dangerously bear down on my quiet and peaceful neighborhood, a neighborhood that has been a wonderful place to raise my children and a community I am proud to call mine. Due to the concern that this could happen again, both here and or in a local community, I reached out to a friend and police officer from the local town and to a family friend that is a Massachusetts state that is a Massachusetts state trooper to see what if they were aware of these grave scenarios and if they had protocols in place for that. I was told there wasn't any policies in place at the state level, and it was left up to the local police chief's discretion to handle such scenarios. I was, however, told with certainty that 2 other local communities would have called the Fall River Police Department and then the State Police Barracks in Dartmouth for much needed support. Again, I'm not being critical of the Freetown Police Department, as I saw several officers acting professionally and to the best of their abilities under overwhelming conditions. This could have happened in any town, and I hope to never see this happen again. But if it does, I would like to know with certainty that our police department has a policy and procedure in place to call the Fall River, Taunton, and/or the New Bedford Police Departments, as well as the state police for necessary backup to protect its residents. We were luckily no one was seriously injured or killed, but we may not be so lucky the next time around. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Sir,
My name is Tom Louise.
you want to come up here so we can hear you?
My name is Tom Louise. I'm a resident at 16 Leonard Avenue, right next door to Craig Vieira. My family moved into this neighborhood just over 10 years ago. At the time we lived there, we've had only one pervasive issue, the insolent parties that have been held at the same residence here, which we're here to discuss this evening. My family has had similar experiences from the party, which we have discussed earlier with several people, particularly troubling with the 2 men loitering at the end of our driveway and harassing a lot of the women as they walk by. This was happening throughout the evening. Especially I'm concerned, I have a 16-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son, which was distressed by all of this and is very concerning to me. Regardless of the reasons of why this happened, a concern we have is it's clear that our emergency services do not have the resources, the training, or contingency plans that are required to avoid and effectively remediate a situation like this. We want to work collaboratively with our police and our town officials to understand how we can get this rectified and prevent this from happening again. I would ask that either working group or action plan be created for accountable owners, timeliness and communication plan put in place so that we can work together to keep our town peaceful and free from a situation like this again.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Tracy Burnett, and I live at 16 Wing Ave, and I'm a resident for 27 years. And I've never seen anything like this. I feared for the safety of our police officers. I feared for the town, the neighborhood, and I also feared for the whole town. Because I don't think anybody's pointed that all the resources were sent to our area, so if you had a child injured or something on the other side of town, they weren't there to help them either. So for the whole town's sake, I really think we need to put something in place that this never occurs again. I mean, we banded together, we tried to make, instead of causing any distraction, be very polite even when they were vulgar. I saw several people with their privates hanging out and whatnot, so it was past the point of, it was awful. People urinating on people's lawns, even up on our end. So I agree with everything everybody's saying, but I do think this is a total town issue. It's not just our neighborhood, because the rest of the town weren't being afforded the protection of the police department. And I also was very concerned that this could turn into a riot very quickly. I don't think the police ever saw anything like this coming. I even called the police and said, be careful for their safety, because this could turn to a very dangerous situation. So I think by all of us remaining calm and getting them out of our neighborhood was the only choice we had.
Very good, thank you very much. Anybody else? Sir?
I was going back to the Hampshire side from my daughters and actually.
Come on down here so we want to know who you are, where you live, and so we can hear you.
I'm Val Texera. I live at 69 Locust Street. I was actually coming back from a dance recital that night and picking him up at Mr. McGee's house. And at the top of the street was a police officer, and then I noticed all the cars. I thought the police was doing the right thing at the moment in regards to, I thought they were going to stop more cars from coming into the neighborhood. So like, all right, good, they're stopping it, it's happening, no more cars are going to be allowed in here. They're at least trying to put a stop so they can get back up. Come to find out there was no police officer in that car. He was patrolling around, trying to do the best he could to try to keep the neighborhood safe, and he was kind of by himself because he was limited. But that's just an idea of, once it gets to a certain point and the neighbors call early and say, hey, listen, this is happening, the police officer should cut the street off and say, there's nobody else entering. There was coach buses coming down Locust Street in front of my house, and I'm watching these people come out. I left the neighborhood because I didn't want my daughters to see this. And God forbid there was an ambulance or something happened, ambulances couldn't fit. God forbid somebody had a seizure, nobody got hurt, nothing happened, we would have been in trouble. This could have been a more serious injury and catastrophe than what it led to. Luckily, it was rude people and people throwing stuff, and we could deal with them, we can pick it up. But the fact that the neighbors didn't care about our safety, and I just saw the apology on TV, which was half-ass and did not even care, and was the most disrespectful. I'm passing an olive tree to the police officer, and then the sister is downgrading and laughing at our police officers. Is the most disrespectful thing. When I was a kid, I would talk to one of the officers here. When a police officer came knocking, and this was just 10 years ago that I graduated high school, you respect the police, you stop, and you leave. You don't tell the police, get off my property, and tell them where to go because you know you're overpowering them. It was the most disrespectful thing I've seen all around to the neighbors and to the police officers, and I've never seen anything like it. And it's teaching our children that what you can do because they think they're above the law and that they can break the law. So, thank you very much.
Anybody else? And listen, I want to thank everybody for coming here tonight and for your support of the police department, because think about it. You had 1,000 people down there, you had 3 guys on duty. I mean, you know, they did the right thing. I want to bring Carlton back up, and because there was a few questions, and
Just give me a couple of minutes to set this
Sure.
point up.
sure. And what we really want to do with this discussion is to make sure we have a plan so that this doesn't happen again. Now, it's very hard to when someone doesn't tell the truth and misleads the police department on what they're having. That's what caused the situation. That's what caused it.
We're adding a bylaw to prevent this in the future.
Well, I'm hoping that we have a way to do it without adding a bylaw, because what happens if you want to have a family gathering and you have 150 people? You know, I mean, I understand, maybe we could put something in place, and that's up to the Board of Selectmen to come up with something, but I think that we ought to put something in place for a significant amount of people, but this should have never happened, in my opinion. I'm gonna turn it over to my other board members if you guys want to comment. I'm just running the meeting here.
Well, that's the case, and like I've met with some of the residents here. We live here, so any rules that we pass, it affects us. They're gone. They came, did their thing, unfortunately, and left. But as we start passing rules to prevent this, it also prevents us from living our lives, and we don't want to do that. We want to find a balance that is fair for everybody, but prevents things like this from happening. To me, that's the most important thing. We can't allow this to go on in the future. One more thing. We talked about putting up no parking signs in front on Leonard Ave and on Wayne Ave and some. But if you have a few people over and they're parked in front of your house and nobody else has a problem and the ambulances can get by, you're going to be affected by it. Because, like I said, you live there. We all live in this town. So the actions we take, we got to be measured at reactions to prevent this from happening, but not limiting your rights and your abilities to live in the town. Yes, sir.
I was just asking if the people are going to get any fines for
I'm going to let
misleading the police.
I'm going to let the chief go over all that stuff, but I speaking with him, I believe there's actions that we as a town are going to take against the people. Ma'am? Somebody over there?
That was the same question I had. I mean, there was multiple,
Sorry.
obviously,
Yes, ma'am.
crimes that they were committing. So that was my question on the fines or...
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that.
There wasn't stabbing there in 2009.
I believe it. Well, I have the exact date. We're going to go over that too.
I just thought that would throw up a red flag when she
Well,
came
almost
in.
a half a decade ago, not necessarily. I'll address that in a minute.
All set to let the chief fill us in? Lisa, you want, hold on. Go ahead,
Thank you.
Lisa.
First and foremost, everybody in this room is right. There is no wrong. It never should have happened, number one. It did happen. We were misled. The board was misled. The police department was misled. But this situation could have been so ugly. Like a couple of weeks ago in Lynn or wherever they had their last party. This could have been ugly. There's only one way in. Everybody mass exit at the same time. People all over the lawn. You could have had sprawl all over the neighborhood. And I just think that the way that the police department handled it, I'm actually proud of them. You know, it could have been ugly. I don't want this to happen. I don't want I work with children every day, and I know what it's like to protect them. And, you know, parents, I commend you for doing what you had to do to protect your kids at that time. But, number one, this board and this police department, they're gonna work together to ensure that we have the safety procedures in place, that this doesn't happen again, and there should be a red flag when is that fine line? When do we cut it off? What do we look at? Maybe look at some of the other towns and what their bylaws are, but I wanna be proactive and not so much reactive, like, how many other parties are we gonna have in town that have 1,000 people? Probably not anymore. So I just wanna make sure that whatever rules and regulations we set forth, that we can live with them. And you know what? You guys did awesome, and you know what? We're never gonna make everybody happy, but we're all safe, and we can all return back to our homes at the end of the night.
Well, one other thing too, and we've been in contact individually with some of our representatives and senators, state senators, and we'd like to work on getting some legislation passed, because they're picking small towns to do this in, because they can come in as a flash mob, overwhelm our resources, have do what they want to do, and then they're gone. So on the state level, there needs to be something with our state reps and our state senators too, to prevent this and make it more of a criminal act, because that's what everybody keeps referring to as a party. It really wasn't a party. It was an event. They sold tickets or wristbands, whatever they sold. They charged money. It was a criminal organization that did this. So, you know, we need to look also at, we're going to take care of, make sure it doesn't happen in our town, but we also need to make sure it doesn't happen in our state and to some of the other local communities with us.
The thing I think that's bothering people the most is that she's mocked the police department
Absolutely.
and the chief with disrespect. And I've also seen that she's on there saying that they're gonna have another party. So I understand we don't, nobody wants to see any more bylaws in this town, but at the end of the day, if it's 1,000 people thing, we can't do that again.
Absolutely right.
I don't even know how
Absolutely.
we came out of it the way we did. We just got rid, some of it was pure luck.
Hold on, chief. Are you here to record?
Yes.
Where are you from?
Channel 10.
Channel 10? Yes, sir.
So I've heard your complaints, I've heard your concerns. I grew up in that neighborhood. My mom and dad bought a piece of property on a handshake back in 1970. I certainly would have been very, very upset if my elderly mom had complained about people urinating on her lawn and running through her house, etc. So I get it. I don't want this to happen again any more than anybody in this room does. But the purpose of this agenda is to walk you through the thought process of law enforcement. You don't have to agree with it. You may not agree with everything, but it's going to give you some perspective. So we're going to look at the property history, how the request came in to have a detail officer, and that detail officer was stationed on the street next to 10 Leonard Avenue and 18, right in that, it's a cul-de-sac down there. I'm going to talk about how we glean information from other sources, and when we don't, how that can be a big failure, like this recent incident. I'm going to address the towing of the vehicles, followed by use of force, that the whole world has changed when it comes to police use of force. How we manage crowds, a noisy event versus a riot, how we would confront, and that possibility of escalation did exist. And then when you do confront crowds, there are central tenets involving egress and allowing them to escape, otherwise it can escalate even greater. We're going to look at mutual aid, which was invoked that night. We're going to talk about the two overall goals that the officers had that night. The first was, let's come out of this with no injuries. No injuries to the police, the residents, or the people attending the crowd. Because not everybody attending that event was a bad person. We suspect the organizers of the event may be linked, and I emphasize may be linked, to gang activity and funneling money to gangs. But many of the people in attendance were innocent people. And then the second overarching goal was to prevent any property damage. Number 13, we did allocate personnel to respond to violent and property crimes. And 14, EMS staging and access to injured persons. And 15, I'm going to address why we can't randomly stop vehicles, why we can't just randomly stop and search people. As far as the property history, I think this woman did point out in 2009 there was a party there was a person stabbed. Many years later, in May of 2016, there was a large party. The police responded. The homeowners appeared to cooperate. They reduced the noise level according to the responding officer, and they also tried to park cars on one side of the road to alleviate traffic. Those were at the instructions of the officer. So, when this particular lady came in June 2016, she represented that she was having a family get-together and that she needed an officer to help manage the cars because they upset the neighbors the last time. Sounded plausible to us. Party, neighbors had complained about parking in the past. She was actually hiring a detail officer to rectify the situation. What she did tell us is that, well, I went over this, right? All right. Family reunion, help park cars, which, yeah.
I'm sorry. So is there any, so there's nothing that says, what do they, why, how can they request a detail? Anybody, so that stabbing in 2009?
Well, I think we have a solution to that now.
Okay.
But you're on the right track. All right. So what she failed to disclose, obviously, she had a major event planned, okay? There were DJs, music, food, liquor. There were wristbands and VIP access being sold. And she even went out onto the web and indicated it had been sold out, okay? And the way these things are set up, they don't give you a particular location as to the event. They put out on social media, you know, we're going to have a party, it's at a Freetown mansion, it's on this date, okay? And these type of events are referred to ambush events or ambush parties because they know they're going to overwhelm local resources. We don't have the intelligence or information at that point, and by the time we react, we're behind the 8 ball, and the party is already underway.
Get the address just before.
Right. She also posted this, Summer 16 kickoff in a Sonnet, tight security. They had 14 security personnel searching people for weapons that were entering, as well as liquor, and also checking the wristbands and collecting the fee from those that didn't have it. But you'll notice there's no particular time. With the ambush party situation, shortly before the party, out on social.
At 6 p.m.
Yeah, but the location, the exact location isn't here.
The start time there. Yeah, it was. We
All right, I
said 6 to
misspoke.
9.
The exact location isn't disclosed. They text that or they get that out on Twitter, etc., shortly before the party is set to begin. And that's what happened in this case. Now, where do we get our information from? Well, we get it from other police departments and we share it with other police departments. In this case, we had no information at all about this party other than a detail request. The residents and neighbors, the greatest source possible, we didn't get a call from a neighbor until 8:53 that night.
Can I ask a question? If there was a detail officer there, why didn't he realize that the
He didn't
roads were
arrive till
dead
9 p.m.
I want to say they were so
The detail wasn't requested till 9 p.m. And then we pick it up on social media, okay? We don't have the cyber capabilities to search the internet and social media in the legal and public domain. And that's something we're going to look at. The detail officer arrives at 9 o'clock. He reports that it's over 400 people already on the scene. It's out of control. There are 100 more cars parked throughout the neighborhood. He apprises that there is, thank goodness, a security contingent present. And he addresses the car situation with the event organizer, this young lady, and she basically says, hey, that's your problem. You know, we take care of what's on the property, you need to take care of the cars. With respect to towing, given the number of vehicles present, number arriving, and how spread out they were, we don't have nearly enough tow trucks. The amount of time to take these vehicles out would have been hours. It certainly would have been creating a conflict with the attendees. We would have had upset attendees leaving the party, 1,000, and walking through the neighborhood looking for their vehicles, probably walking through your yards, etc. So towing was not an option at that point. With respect to use of force, you know, I've seen stuff on social media, or I've heard stuff, use SWAT teams, let dogs on them, etc. That doesn't happen. We don't do that. Last year and this year, the Mass Police Training Commission curriculum focused on de-escalation, not having the police go in and actually create an exigency, to look at reducing force, use restraint, try mediation, try negotiation. We circulated a document within the police department in March of this year, and it was from the Police Executive Research Forum, a renowned institute, and what were they talking about? They were talking about the changing paradigm again. The use of force is questionable, and you watch the news, you see it. You know, we're second guessed for everything, we're sued, we're accused of excess of force. And person, we really need to rethink our training, our policies, our practices, and how we use force. And we should be focusing on de-escalation. Now, those are important things in the mind of the police officer and in the mind of the sergeants that were down there during the decision process. That's what's going through their mind. Now we look at crowd management. What did we have down there? Okay? When everything is distilled, we had a loud and noisy party. Okay? We did not have a riot. All right? In a riot, you have use of force, imminent threat of force to people. We didn't have that. We had a report of a fight that occurred down there. When security and police responded, it determined it was unfounded. That was the only report down there. We didn't have an unlawful assembly where violence posed a clear and present danger. And with respect to isolated unlawful behavior by individuals or small groups within the crowd, we had no evidence of that. Again, our perspective was it was a loud and noisy event. That's what we had. 1,000 people attending. Again, SWAT team, snipers, use of force. There's no way you're going to be doing that on innocent people. They're used for active shooters and barricaded suspects. And unleashing or using canines on partygoers, it's constitutionally unacceptable. So what happened was 2 of our sergeants approached the homeowners and the young lady that was the organizer. And they asked them all, to shut it down. They refused to do that. The sergeants insisted. They refused to do that. They told the police once again, what happens on our property is our business. You deal with the problems on the street. So now we had a critical decision to be made. Are we going to summons about 100 officers that would be needed to address a party of that size? And the answer was no, because what would happen, there was certainly going to be a confrontation, and there certainly was going to be an escalation of force, okay? People had been consuming alcohol. There were other indicia of potential violence. I'll give you an example. We had people wearing some gang colors. We had people with covering their face to conceal their identity. We had people walking with baggy pants that were either concealing liquor or firearms or weapons. Sergeant Ashley observed a cadre of young men approach the entry point, and when these young men saw the security guards, they turned and walked away. Well, I can tell you, they didn't walk away because they didn't have an admission fee, okay? So there was a real and present danger to the officers if they had confronted and escalated this situation. We had some challenging topography down there. Having lived in the neighborhood, I realized it was a funnel for Leonard Avenue. There was swamp to one side, and we had people's dwelling houses that were part of this funnel. Whenever you confront a crowd and want to disperse it, you need an escape or a egress function. You just can't corner these people like, you can't just corner them. You know, that's a disaster. They need a way to escape safely. Unfortunately, that wasn't going to happen here, okay? Because, like I said, of the topography, swamp woods, your homes, it was one little narrow exit for them, for this 1,000 people. That's where the police skirmish line, about 100 officers, would have set up, okay? So now you have 100 officers with their vehicles and equipment set up. How do these people leave? Okay? Many of them are innocent, in panic, trying to escape. Where are they going to go? They're going to go right into the police skirmish line. That's a disaster waiting to happen. The other thing is, you have to remember, now we have 1,000 people pissed off, fleeing through the neighborhood, okay? Disoriented, don't know where their cars are. What are they going to be doing? Potential property damage, running through your yards, etc. So it didn't appear to be a viable solution. The use of force did not appear viable to us under the circumstances. We did call mutual aid. We had our midnight shift come in, all 3 officers that joined our 3 officers working. We had Lakeville and Berkeley police departments. The state police were alerted. They had 2 troopers in Dartmouth. They had 2 in Bourne, I think 3 in Middleborough. But we weren't going to use them because we weren't going to confront the crowd. We had decided we were not going to use a tactical confrontation and risk the escalation of violence. That decision was made.
Was there any cost added to the town's budget to this body? Are they going to pay for anything?
There was an additional cost of the 3 officers that came in that night.
They get the bill or the taxpayer?
Well, I don't believe you can reach them under the existing law because you have a duty to the whole public. But that being said, we're going, with the permission of the board, we're going to seek out town council's opinion as to any type of civil action we can bring to recoup the expenses, and also perhaps enjoin this type of behavior through a civil injunction in the future.
So those civil people don't have parties like that.
Yeah, they paid $10,000.
It took us till 3:30 a.m. to get them out of our neighborhood.
I get it. I understand.
I did a lot of biting my hand that night. I've been there 48 years.
So again, if we were going to confront, we would need a great deal of officers, and then what we would have had is a choke point. Officers, vehicles, equipment, all stacked into that area would have prevented vehicles from exiting the neighborhood, because, as you know, there's only one way in and one way out of that neighborhood. Again, our overarching goals that evening were no injuries, no property damage, and that was reinforced with the officers. Having said that, we allocated our personnel to monitor littering, yelling, other nuisances that they could see, and to address that. Not with a physical arrest, but either yelling or collecting information, etc. And the reason for that is, anytime you make an arrest for urinating or littering, that takes 2 officers off of the street. They have to come all the way up here to do the booking. It seemed at the time to make better sense to leave those 2 officers deployed in the neighborhood in the event there was an offense involving violence or somebody breaking into your home or car. So that's where we wanted to allocate those resources. We also have a big issue, and many of you touched on it. You touched on it in the context of, hey, what if my neighbor needed the ambulance, okay? What if I needed the ambulance? Well, we looked at it that way, but also in terms of, what if we needed the ambulance? What if partygoers needed the ambulance because of a confrontation? I saw the fire chief. Is he still here? Chief, what would you estimate the need for ambulances to stage for a crowd of 1,000 in which the police were going to have a confrontation and likely injuries result. Okay, the chief said a dozen ambulances. What would that have meant? We would have had to stage EMS, 12 ambulances on Locust Street or even farther away, okay? They would have had to walk and carry stretchers and equipment for 3/4 of a mile to even get to the event, okay? And that would be through hostile territory. Because all of these people that we cracked their heads or we used tasers on or OC, well, they were going to be mad and they'd be leaving. Innocent EMS personnel are going to have to be walking by those crowds and retreating through those crowds with injured people. Not a good idea. And of course, all of those personnel would have created a choke point as well. With respect to roadblocks and random stop and frisk, clearly unconstitutional. You cannot just stop vehicles for any random reason. You can't stop them because they're leaving a party. But even if you could, as a crowd control measure, you don't do it. Your goal is move that crowd forward, get those cars out of that neighborhood, keep it moving. Because as soon as you stop one car and start interacting with that group, and there's 300 cars of his buddies or friends behind it, you got a bad situation. So the officer's goal, and they're trained to do this, is move it, move it, move it, move along. So that's what I have there. What are our expectations as a police department? The same as yours. We don't want this to happen again. We'd like to see appropriate bylaws and mechanisms instituted to prevent this from happening again. I'm going to work with the board. I'm going to work with town council so we can put some of those in place. And we want to see the responsible persons charged with the crime. They're not getting away with this. You know, it may seem that. Maybe justice is a little slow, but it's not going to be denied here. So we're looking at disturbing the peace for the homeowners and the party organizer. We're looking at all three of them being charged with a disorderly house. Of course, they did not have an entertainment license, and people would be admitted for entertainment. They were serving liquor without a license, and I know the Board of Health has already issued 1 or 2 citations, and I think, what do they call it, the condition, order of conditions that they have to follow.
In the DOR.
Action, okay? Somebody asked about the detail, I think it was you, asked about the detail form. So what's going to happen now is, unless you're a contractor working on a road, when you come in and you want a detail officer, there's going to be a form to be filled out. And we want to know, and it's going to be signed under the penalties of perjury. So if you've material misrepresented yourself, we're going to bring a perjury charge against you.
That's not covered right now?
No, no. So we want to know the number of people attending. We want to know if liquor's being served, you know, in what capacity. Is it being provided by a company? Is it just the family providing the liquor? And what about the food? Who's supplying the food? Is it being catered? And all of these kick in various licensing requirements. Is there an attendance fee? Is there entertainment? What kind of entertainment? You know, are there amplification systems? Is it a band, etc.? And we want an overall safety plan. Where are all of these people going to park? You know, show us. Additionally, if all of these people are attending, what about sanitary facilities, porta johns, etc.? So hopefully this will capture that. But that being said, and I think Craig pointed out in a meeting with me, there are some people, they just don't care, and we're not going to catch them, and we're not going to do this, you know. But that being said, we have to, okay? We have to implement these things. We're going to look at a noise bylaw. Right now we have a Massachusetts state law that talks about disturbing the peace, etc. Well, when you deal with a noise bylaw, it's more specific to times, it's more specific to amplification systems, etc. It's specific to decibels or normal hearing within a 300 or 200 foot radius. And it also grabs the property owners because they'll be prima facie responsible for the events. Another thing to consider would be a crowd or assembly bylaw. Has been proposed in the past, not with this board, but in such a case, if you were going to have a party over 200 people, 300 people, whatever the number that is agreed upon, then you need a permit. The permit's not going to cost you a dime, but what it's going to do is going to capture, once again, all of this information that's necessary for the Board of Health to determine relative to food and sanitary, the police department, when liquor serve any detail officers, is a liquor license required, entertainment license, all of those things. So we're looking at that. The other thing, and I alluded earlier, was technology. And I have our detective, here, looking into this, because this could be a little costly. But what this technology allows us to do is put in certain terms like a sonnet fight, a sonnet party, or perhaps this young lady's public domain, her public, information. So we don't have a detective sitting in front of a computer trying to search the internet every day. That's A, not productive, and it's not cost effective. So we're looking at technology that would help us monitor social media. What was some of the costs, Shane, on?
The one that everybody recommends is approximately $15,000 to $20,000 a year.
Okay, so one is 15 to 20. I think there's some free stuff out there.
Yeah, there are.
And I spoke with the Fall River Chief earlier today about sharing with a number of departments the cost and collecting this information. I also spoke to him about his department's readiness to assist us, and I'll be quite candid, although they're ready to assist us, ready, willing, and able, they're very busy on Saturday nights. We probably would have had a sergeant and 1 or 2 patrolmen, if that. And well, I don't want to bring the chief in, but I'm going to stick by our officer's assessment and my assessment of the total situation. So that's the police department's mindset as to the events that occurred. Some good questions. Do we do everything perfect? Absolutely not. Did we make some mistakes? Of course we did. I think we could have shut down the area a little earlier, but overall, with the number of people that were down in that crowd, we still would have faced all of the same issues with confrontation, choking the neighborhood, etc.
Chief, with everything that you brought up here, again, it's great for law-abiding citizens. I haven't heard one thing that tells me how I get the next 1,000+ people out of my neighborhood.
Well, the answer is, you gotta call the police as soon as you suspect something. When you see a car pull up in front of your yard and 4 people that look like they don't belong there, call. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what we get paid for. We'll come down, we'll check it out. If they're lawfully there, great. If not, it may have tipped us off to more coming. So I think that's one piece of it. And the other, I think, is trying to get ahead on social media. I think you provided some information about a potential party you picked up. The detective looked into it, and it was an ambush party up in Brockton, so we shared that information. Some departments have the technology, some departments get the heads up, and when you do that, you can plan. You can plan to have appropriate people in the area. You can start towing vehicles very early, and many of the recommendations that you made, it's possible to do.
When they asked for the detail, did you guys know about 15 security guys that were going to be there?
No, none of that was disclosed to us.
Do we know the company, or was it a company?
We know who the company was that was the promoter, yes, and we're sharing that with some federal law enforcement agencies because we think there's a pattern.
That supply to the security?
Well, we're looking at it in terms of, none of these companies were even registered with the Secretary of State. We're looking at, where does that money go? And it doesn't, well, I don't want to get too deep into that.
First of all, the presentation was great, and I thought you guys did the best you could to handle what you had for the situation. But by the time you guys got down there, like you're right, it was out of control, it was too late, and you had to handle with the situation what was gonna be the least invasive to everybody, because the neighbors were scared. And we were listening to people talking, you guys did the best you could for the Freetown police, and they knew what they were doing. Just two things. It's a situation learned, and I hate to see that these people think they got away with something, which I think is the biggest thing that's getting us angry, and I love the fact that you're gonna continue to pursue it, and lessons need to be learned for the rest of the state, because they're not just gonna target Asona, Freetown, Westport,
Yeah.
Raynham. Ambush parties are gonna happen everywhere.
I was following that up with a state senator as well, because this is something perhaps the Mass State Police Fusion Center should be trying to collect this data and information and then disseminate it.
No, precedent is set, because once these people hear that these people, and it should be all over the news, national news, not just in Mass, in Rhode Island, wherever, it should be known that these ambush parties aren't just happening in Massachusetts. Here's the consequences you face if you're gonna host one of these parties. The next thing too is something that could prevent it, that we could learn. If I ask for a detail, then I'm not gonna let my guests come until the detail cop gets there first, because then that could have been prevented. If the detail cop would have been there at 6 when the party started, he could have seen, and again, it's just an opinion, the detail cop could have seen, hey, you know what, Chief Abbott, I see people coming
Let's
back
nip it
in
in the
the
bud, exactly.
Yeah, but again, that's hindsight stuff. But that's the type of stuff, the way to prevent it, to say, cut this street off now, the top of Locust, the top of this, ain't no coach buses coming this way. Sorry for the slang. But it is what it is. Like at that point, it's easy hindsight to think of that type of stuff. But that party, if you're asking for a thing, you tell that host, you do not start that party until that detail officer's there. If he's running late, too bad, too sad, your party's starting late. Your guests do not park. There's phone, because as I was leaving, I'm hearing somebody in this neighbor being really nice saying, can you please not park on my grass, park on the street. The guy turned to the neighbor, an older man, and said, if my car is touched or anything happens to my car, you'll be getting a knock on your door at 3 a.m., so you better watch out. Guy went right back in his house scared. Drove away.
My name is Gail Holman, and I live on the corner of Wing and Cudworth. So I was right there. It was gridlocked. I have an 84-year-old mom with heart condition. And I got home probably about 8:45, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I immediately called the police.
And you guys, by the time you guys got there, it was out of control and it was too late. Neighbors were doing the best they can to be polite to people. These people were not being polite back. It got to a point where it's just like, wow, this is a joke. But then when we saw cars coming and coming and coming, it got to a point where the joke just turned into complete fear. And you guys did the best that you could. But we're about to experience it now next weekend with the 4th of July. But you guys are properly prepared. There's permits out for it. We do it every year. So it's not like Asona's never seen a mash of people, of cars. We can handle it. We respect it. But absolutely. But the other big thing, the other biggest thing too is what I stated earlier is I respected the police 10 years ago, and I expect my kids to respect the police 10 years ago from now. And if a cop tells you to go to your house and turn down the music, you want to keep the party going, that's fine. 10 years ago, I didn't have that option. Officer Sweet shows up to my house and says, stop the party, get out. Guess what we did? We got out. And I know it was different 10 years ago, but there was a different respect. When you have people tweeting this stuff and mocking our police officers, that's not acceptable, and that's putting our whole town, our whole state down.
I also had half a case of beer smashed against my trees. I had a bottle of Hennessy in my driveway. I had urine everywhere. I had women's stuff in my driveway. I had 4 cars were parked on my 4 cars were parked on the corner of my house, sitting on their roof, smoking pot. And they did not care that I said if they could just get off my lawn. So at that point, I just told Mom, mind your business, just let them do what they want to do because retaliation is going to happen. But it's very, very scary. Again, I don't have children, but I have an 84-year-old mother that stayed up until 4 a.m. until that last car left.
Okay,
this gentleman here,
you want to take some more?
Just one last question. My biggest concern is, and I've already stated that your police officers did a fine job. I saw many examples of that. But what if there was a riot? What if there was a shooting? What if there was gangs? I saw people getting dropped off in buses. 60 from Dorchester, then buses from Brockton dropping off people. Now if there's 2 different gangs, what was the backup plan for that? And that was my point.
Well, our overall strategy was no confrontation.
No, but once
once we realized they had a a competent security force searching for weapons down there. We had seen some people leaving because they were afraid of being detected. In our opinion, I felt a little better at that point.
Chief, we got one gentleman up there, and then I'm gonna let Sergeant Elton Ashley, who was the officer in charge, he wants to say a few words. Person back there.
Steve Martin, Washburn Road. I deal with these residents.
Yeah, I do. They got a great neighborhood.
Put myself, I've driven their neighborhood many times. You kind of made it sound easy when you said you would just call, if you had to, you would have needed 100 officers. I think people in here need to understand, where would you have drawn 100 officers?
So we would have had to call.
And I think you guys handled it perfectly. I don't know what you would have done if the party's out of control. There's not much you can do at that point, but make sure you keep the neighborhood as safe as possible and keep things de-escalated. I think you guys did that, but I'd like to hear, where would you pull 100?
Yeah, we would have activated the Southeastern Mass Law Enforcement Consortium. There's 36 communities. My guess, within about 2 hours, we would have had a command post set up, and we'd be looking at operational plans. With respect to the state police, well, the troopers that were on the road would have responded. And I'm guessing that's about 6 from the Dartmouth, Middleborough, Bourne. But we could have requested more. My guess is that would have been another hour to 2 hours. And of course, incident command, overall operation set up, a plan, etc. Yeah, so it could have been done, but it would have taken a while. But we gotta back up, because the decision was made that we did not want a confrontation.
Right, I'm sure though there were people in here that didn't want to hear that. I just thought that the way you made it sound like.
No, you just don't flick the switch.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know where you were, I don't know what you said 100 officers, I'm like, I don't know where you
Yeah, it would take quite a while.
Okay, Sergeant Elton Ashley would like to address the,
I just have one question about going forward, because, and I don't think it was addressed. We just had 1,000 people introduced into our neighborhood in our town, and I know that there were comments about, well, they're rich, is there gonna be extra patrols going on? Because we have now the real possibility of theft, breaking in entry. They may come back, I hope they don't, but I just wanted, because I don't feel safe, because I don't know what's gonna happen.
Well, we have 3 patrols, one in Asona and one in East Freetown. We have a supervisor, and the Asona patrol was in your neighborhood tonight, as a matter of fact.
Well, I have seen them more recently,
Yeah.
I've seen them a lot more.
In case, you know, you were up here and somebody wanted to do something crazy, so you should. And if you don't, well, we'll call. You can call me and I'll make sure that you see some more officers.
my name is Paul Walker, if something would happen, you would happen, I have to treat people in my house.
Yeah, you would have been up the creek without the paddle, you know?
Well, I need a paddle.
Hi, everybody. My name is...
Okay, let's let Elton Ashley speak.
My name is Elton Ashley. I was the officer in charge that night. I know the chief didn't mention my name. He's trying to protect me, but I was the one that was making those decisions down there. And it pains me that you people was here. Hearing some of your stories in the beginning of the night, it was painful. Because our job is to protect and serve you. And my guys would take a bullet for anybody here at any time to do that. That night, somebody mentioned a storm. It was a storm. It was not forecast, and it came on top of us. We had 3 guys. And every decision that I made that night, I was thinking of you guys. We had a powder keg. We needed a spark. And I did everything I could. And my guys, who did a great job, because we all went home, and nobody was hurt, and there was no property damage, we didn't have that spark. I apologize for your inconvenience, but we were overwhelmed. And the decisions with myself, and when I communicated with the chief and let him apprise of the information, but we did everything we could. So we're here tonight to talk about it. There wasn't that spark. There wasn't that riot. There wasn't property damage. There wasn't a shootout. There wasn't. We got those people, and when those property owners looked us right in the face and said, "We're not shutting down the party," I knew we had to let it ride. We were treading water at that point. We could not go in there at force, because there would have been an explosion. It would have been off. Sir?
I think you've heard multiple times, we respect what you did. We truly do. So I know you hear a lot of anger because thank God nothing happened. But thank God, like you said, nothing happened. We respect what you did. We respect even more than even having this meeting right now to hear our voices. And we respect that you're not going to let this go. That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest concern that I think that I have and that other people have is that you're not going to let this go. That night, it was an ambush. That's the best way to describe that party. It was an ambush party. When you get ambushed and you're stuck, there's nothing you can do. And now you just have to figure out how can I get out of this and how can I get these people out of this as safely as possible. And you guys put a PowerPoint presentation together that explained how to do it. You know, so you did the best you could with what you had to work with 1,000 cars. Well, I had the ability to get out and escape. Some people didn't.
Right.
You know, you did what you could. And I know there's a lot of anger and emotion, but the fact that you guys aren't letting this go and that you're putting more plans in place is making me feel safe.
And that's our goal, is to make you guys feel safe. We want to reduce the fear of crime. That night, it was out of our hands, but we did the best we could, the information. And of course, we're dealing at the scene. We still don't realize there is a whole sea of more traffic and buses that are coming in. We didn't even have anybody out there. We had 3 guys who were here trying to deal with the situation. We dispatched them out when we got called. We did the best we could. Tracy, I remember looking at you, and I could see you had fear in your eyes, and I'm sure you saw that I had fear in my eyes. We wanted everybody to go home. We didn't want any cars flipped over. We didn't want any property damage or anything else. But we did what we did so we could be here tonight and talk about it. Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, one more thing. Thanks for letting everybody express their opinion on what happened that night. I appreciate it. But the thing is, what's the next step? Where do we go from here?
Well, all right, listen, I think it was a great presentation. Everybody had a lot of good questions. You can see how the training that our guys have came into play and how they made the decisions based on the training they had. They did the right thing. I know that Carlton and our legal counsel is pursuing the legal avenue about the people that threw the party and so forth. And I think an important thing to know from your neighborhood and all the neighborhoods in town is something that Carlton pointed out earlier. You see an influx of people that are not normally coming in, and you think there's going to be a party. Call right away, and at least it gives the police officers a chance to be on top of it. I mean, this was an ambush. There's no question about it. It was an ambush, and hopefully it'll never happen again in town.
I'll tell you one thing, it came in like water. By the time the cops got called, it was coming in like water, because I've seen graduation parties, I've seen neighbors have parties. We've all gone to each other's doors and knocked and said, hey, I'm going to have a party, do you mind if we park this way, giving each other the heads up. Like, the neighborhood, if anything, we had Jeff, who actually put together a website, and everyone's actually come closer together. It's almost like we have our own little police watch going on, and it's terrific. Like, the fact that somebody took initiative to kind of, hey, this is going on, that's going on, I'm going on vacation, can you watch this? It's led us closer as a community, which is great, but when it came in like water, you guys, the police were ambushed and so were the neighbors. Like, we had no, by the time we gave you a call, it was too late. That's why I said it's easy for me to look at stuff in hindsight. No party till the patrol officer is there where he can make this call and say, put a car at the end of each road and stop it now and block it off.
Really and truly, the best defense on this right now going forward is everybody sitting here and everybody in the community. If you see something, call. One more, and then we can close this down, I hope.
So what happens when you call, but then the same thing happens and they turn around and they say, nope, I'm not shutting it down?
Hopefully the calls will come in fairly early, and we can either start towing, a rather small group, 50, 100 people rather than 1,000.
Right, but if it's 50 and 100 people and we still only have our 3 cops, are we going to go back to the same thing that we just watched about? As
well,
people continue
if
to
it
show up?
escalated at the speed it did, there's a potential for that. But I think what Paul Sadek is trying to say is, if we nip it in the bud, if we can be alerted to a situation in its infancy, then we have a heck of a better chance of, abating the nuisance or the problems.
I know, and again, we go back
if
to, if people are respectable and they do what you're supposed to do, it's one thing. But they turned around and they said, no, I'm not shutting the party down.
What's the case
so
here,
what happens
really?
again when that happens? Oh, Laura, yeah.
Laura. So Laura, it's not the police, it's not the neighbors. You have one family or one lady in particular that has a total disregard, total lack of respect for the neighbors. Will she come in and fill out the detail work?
No.
Will she come in for the amusement? So we really, so I'm kind of begging you guys to really be our eyes and ears.
Right, and I
Somebody
know, and
mentioned
I'm not saying that
a
it's gonna be
group.
1,000 people.
I actually started a Facebook page after getting, the next morning, Craig, I found a note in my mailbox about getting together, and then I started a Facebook page for all my neighbors, and I have over 30 to 40 of my neighbors on the Facebook page from my neighborhood.
So we might be able to augment that. I may be able to assign a sergeant to you, sort of like your neighborhood liaison. And not necessarily for this type of stuff, but, you know, if you suspect there's a sex offender living in your neighborhood, or, you know, people are breaking into cars, but you don't want to actually make a formal report and things like that. It may help a little.
And I agree with the chief.
Being a group is important.
We had, one of the midnight sergeants was in the military police, and he had best quote for that night. He said, "This was more than a platoon strength of people. This was more than a company strength of people. This was a full battalion strength of people. We had 3 guys. If we can get notified when it's a platoon strength, myself and the 2 guys that I'm working with, we'll shut the party."
Yeah, that was what I was gonna ask. I mean, if you had a small party that was on hand, 100 people, and you called, their actions would have been different then. They would have shut down the party, and the people would have stopped the noise. They were just overwhelmed. You can't, and they made the right choice, in my opinion. We got enough? Have we had enough? All right, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. I thank the police chief, Sergeant Ashley, the guys from the police department that came in, all the residents. Thank you very much, and the motion to adjourn? Motion made and second, all in favor? Aye, thanks a lot.